What's up, everyone? So I've noticed that a lot of times when I make videos, I get comments, and I get a lot of good comments on my videos. I'm very thankful for that. Like, compared to some other YouTubers, I think that my comment section is pretty good, pretty civil, pretty thoughtful. But I notice that I get a lot of the same types of comments. Like, there are sort of trends within the comments. Like, a lot of people have the same questions or the same concerns, and I try to respond to comments, especially like within the first few days of the video being put out. But of course, if people keep asking the same questions or bringing up the same concerns, I don't want to just like copy and paste the same answer to each person. So I came up with an idea of a Redux series where if I have a particularly contentious video or video that spawned a lot of comments, I can come in and address some of those common trends in the comments, so I don't have to like individually comment on each question, because there's been many times where I'll see a comment and it's like, oh man, I literally just responded to that like 30 minutes ago. I don't want to have to type the same thing over and over again, nor do I want to have to say, I don't want to have to respond to someone like, yeah, go read the answer I left on this other comment. So you can tell me if you like this idea. If you think it's unnecessary, just tell me and then I will stop doing it. But it seems like a good thing to do because my whole point is to like further the discussion about things. So if you think it's a good idea, let me know. So anyway, in this video, I'm going to go over a couple of the main concerns and questions I got on my last video called "Are you a feminist?" The one comment that I got a bunch of times on the last video was the fact, because I implied that when people say, "Are you a feminist?" they're doing it to sort of trap you into saying that you're not a feminist, so to make you kind of look bad. But what a lot of people were saying was sometimes people ask that the other way around to get you to say that you are a feminist, and then they'll criticize you for saying that you are a feminist. And for this, I think it kind of just depends on what circles you find yourself around, who you hang out with, what part of social media you're on. I know that there are people, like there are entire YouTube channels devoted to making fun of feminists and shitting on feminists. Like, I know that people react to feminists that way, so I'm not denying that. But I'm pretty sure I've never seen in my personal life someone specifically ask a person, "Are you a feminist?" with the purpose of shitting on them for saying that they are a feminist. I've heard people shit on people once they learn that someone's a feminist, but I've never personally seen someone try to trap someone in that way. While I have seen it the other way all the time, like over and over again, particularly in the media and on TV and stuff. You know how they like interview celebrities and stuff, where they say, "Are you a feminist? Do you consider yourself a feminist?" And on TV, like if you're a celebrity or something, you pretty much have to say yes, or you're gonna get shit on on the internet the next day. But I'm not saying that my experience is the baseline for all experiences. I'm sure it happens, but that's why I said it the way that I did in the video, because that's what I've seen. I've literally never seen it the other way around. That's just my experience. Another concern that I got, and you get this pretty much anytime anyone provides any criticism of feminism, people always say something like, it sucks when people, use the example of extremist feminists and like claim that that's how all feminists are. And this is just a typical hashtag not all blank argument. And there's several responses I have to this. For one, I think that to some extent there can be a disagreement on what is considered an extremist view, because I think there are a lot of things that have gathered mainstream support in the modern feminist movement that are things that I think are completely wrong and that I completely disagree with. Like, I think sometimes feminists make the argument, if you disagree with it, then it's an extremist view and it's not what all feminists believe, which implies that, if you're a real feminist, then you can't possibly be disagreed with. But for example, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm very wary about political correctness and things like that. And I think it's become very mainstream in feminism to push forward and advance politically correct notions and policing of language and words and things like that. So, and I think that's mainstream. I don't think that's an extremist view at all. I think that's a very common feminist argument. It may not be what all feminists believe, but I think it's common enough to not be called extremist. And then the other argument against that is whether or not something is extremist, because I think what people say a lot of the time is, oh, the extremist feminists, they just are the loudest, so they get the most attention, they get shared the most in social media. Well, from my perspective, that's not my fault. If that's what I see, that's what I'm going to associate with your movement. And if you don't want that to be associated with your movement, you have to find a way to detract from that, or to disown that, or to be louder than that. It's your responsibility to control what's associated with your movement. I mean, if you care to inspire people to join your movement, then it's your responsibility to give people a reason to. Because if I'm on the outside of the movement and that's what I see, that's what I'm going to associate with it. And that's why people like me are, hesitant to associate themselves with certain movements and certain labels, because it's very possible that you will become associated with something that you don't agree with. That's just part of the deal. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, I deal with this sometimes because I have chosen to identify as an atheist. Now, to me, the word atheist simply means, has a very strict definition. But of course, certain people have caused atheism to become associated with certain things, and it's my responsibility to try to counter that and to overcome that. And I think atheists like me have done a pretty decent job of separating certain types of atheists from other types of atheists. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is a common comment that you get every time you talk about feminism, is the idea of feminism being necessary or unnecessary. Now, in the video, I specifically said that I think that a women's rights movement is necessary and is valuable. But a lot of people argue that feminism isn't necessary, at least in the West. Some people argue that feminism might be necessary for people in, developing countries where women have it particularly bad, but not in the West. And I don't agree with this at all. I think it's very clear to me that women are a disadvantaged group in America and in the West in general. I think there's a lot of evidence for this. I think that men are considered the default in most cases. Men are perceived as being more competent than women. There are things that men can get away with in society that women can't get away with. Men can get away with being aggressive and assertive, while when women do this, they're often considered like bitchy or bossy or things like that. There are entire industries and companies devoted specifically to reducing the self-esteem of women so they can buy their products. Most industries are male dominated. Most jobs are male dominated. Most media has a male point of view, like most movies and video games and books have a male point of view. Even books about women or that feature women. So I think that there's a lot of evidence that women are a marginalized and disadvantaged group in the West, and for that reason, I think that feminism is necessary. And this is just all off the top of my head. If I were, tasked with the job of providing a more scholarly analysis of why this is the case, I could do that, because I do think there's a lot of evidence for this. And this is not to say that men have no problems. In fact, I did a whole video called Men's Issues about men's issues. But I think on the whole, as a trend, men are, more advantaged than women in most societies. So that's what I think about that. And finally, an argument that I got a lot was when I mentioned the term egalitarianism. For some reason, a lot of people thought that I was arguing that we should replace feminism with egalitarianism. I assume the reason people thought that is because a lot of people say that. But this is something that I want to stress to you guys. Listen to the argument that I make in my video if you want to respond to my video. This happens to me a lot. Like, I'll say something that sounds kind of similar to some argument they heard somewhere else, and so they respond to that argument instead of the argument that I actually made. Like, that's like kind of one of the whole points of my channel, is to be thoughtful about the argument. Like, don't just set up this straw man and be ready to attack this straw man just because you've heard it before. Listen to the actual argument that the person you're talking to is giving and respond to that. Because a lot of people do say, I've heard it myself, people say feminism is not necessary, just be egalitarian. But as I mentioned right before this in this video, I do think feminism is necessary, but I think it is a branch of egalitarianism. But I got so many comments that are like, no, we don't need to replace feminism with egalitarianism, or the problem with replacing feminism with egalitarianism is this. It's like, no, I didn't argue in the video that we should replace feminism with egalitarianism. It's like people hear the word egalitarianism and then they just have like this robotic response. Like, don't do that, okay? Listen to the argument that the person is giving and then respond to that. I think that any movement that stresses equality of human beings falls under the tree of egalitarianism. But egalitarianism by itself can never be useful because it's too broad. We need specific movements that focus on specific factions of equality. And there's so many different things to focus on. Like there's gender equality, which is what feminists focus on. There's racial equality, there's legal equality, economic equality. Like there's so many different specific factors that we can never have just one word for all of that. We need people to focus in. Anytime there's inequality, we need a movement for that. So that's not the argument I was making. And I feel like it's pretty clear that wasn't the argument I was making. I want to stress, respond to the argument that you're given, not the argument that you heard somewhere else. Like I had one commenter say, the problem with the egalitarian argument is that bad people use that argument. Like shitty people use that argument. It's like, no, that has nothing to do with my video. What someone else said on some other post or some other video has zero to do with the argument that I'm making. So respond to that argument. That'd be cool. Anyway, like I said, you can tell me if you think these kinds of videos are useful. I feel like it could be useful just because it furthers the conversation and it can touch on more points than were made in the video. And also I don't have to, make the same comment 20 times every time I make a video. But if not, if you think discussing it in the comments is better, just let me know. But, I'm trying new things and we'll go from there. Thank you for watching my video. I want to remind you guys that I have a Patreon. If you want to support me further, check out my Patreon. It's basically like Kickstarter except for people with ongoing projects like a YouTube channel. There should be a link in the description and on the screen. And I will have another video for you very, very soon. Thanks for watching.